Hey, I'm Nick, and in this video, you'll hear from Greg Atkinson, who leads the First Impressions Conference. And Greg is pretty much the person when it comes to church guest experience and how to help guests have a great experience at your church, whether that's in person or online, like we talk about in this interview. Greg talks about the plan your visit option and how so many churches are using that now, and what does that need to look like. He talks about the digital Connect card and where that needs to show up in your church. He talks about how we forget sometimes people that are watching online, including himself. He shares a story about how he felt forgotten at his own church when it came to online and how we can make strides to not forget people in the digital experience. Now, Greg leads the First Impressions Conference. No matter when you're watching this, it happens every year, and you can sign up for that and get a discount, get $20 off if you use the code NICK. Just go to firstimpressionsconference.com and you can sign up there. Now, this interview is part of some bonus content for the new digital church course. That course is all about helping churches reach and connect people online. So if that's something that might help your church, check out newdigitalchurch.com. If this is helpful to you, give this video a like. And if you want to see the other ones in this series, make sure you hit subscribe. Well, hey, Nick Blevins here, and I'm here with Greg Atkinson. Welcome, Greg.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. Tell us about you and your ministry, and we're going to talk all about the First Impressions Conference. So tell us all about that as we get started.
Yeah, I started in ministry in 1994, so I've been 26 years church staff ministry and consulting ministry for 15 years. Started consulting in 2005 and started my worship impressions business in 2009. And have worked with over 200 churches around the country, consulting and church guest experience, guest services, first impressions, hospitality, worship, anything to do with the Sunday morning experience. We go in and help evaluate that and give them feedback. And so based out of that, I was consulting with a church, and the executive pastor said, "We just hired somebody to be over first impressions. What conference should we send them to?" And I said, there isn't anything, because I have spoke on first impressions at conferences all over North America since 2000. So for 20 years, I've been a breakout or a panel or even a keynote, but it was never a conference dedicated to first impressions and the guest experience. And so I started that in 2018, and we are now working on our 4th and 5th conferences that we'll do back to back.
That's great. And that's such an important thing with church. I think it's sometimes we miss that, especially when people, that's the people who are already showing up, right? It's one thing to get people to come to church. It's another thing to do a great job when they arrive. And this year, when we're recording this, changed everything because COVID-19 put churches online. And I know you had an experience with that at your own church where you were online, you're watching, and then because the opportunity to meet in person again came back, maybe there was a ball drop there or something like that. Tell us about your experience, because I do want to talk all about guest experience online.
Yeah, so all throughout the country, depending on when you're watching this, people have started to loose restrictions or allow people to come back at certain numbers or capacity, whether it be a percentage or 25 people here, 50 people here. I think it's 5 or 10 in Canada, or over 100 in California, or wherever you may be. There's different restrictions, but people have started coming back. But what studies show, whether it be Barna or all the glue surveys, and then even informal polls in my own I have 2 Facebook groups that are over 22,000 people. And one of the things that I've found is that 20 to 40% of the original congregation comes back. It's usually right around 30%. So even if your doors are flung open and you say, hey, everybody, welcome back. We're so glad for you to come back. Wear a mask, social distance, come back. We're ready, we're welcoming. Only 30% come back. That means 70% are still at home watching through a camera lens like this. And so I spoke at the Church Online Summit, and I talked about not forgetting the people at home and including them. And so my own home church, it's a small church plant. We're in South Carolina, right at the border of North Carolina in the Charlotte metro. And we're here where they loose the restrictions and they open up. And I have some health issues and some of my kids have health issues. And then even my own mom, who is a breast cancer survivor and just finished chemo, has a weakened immune system and can't go out in public. It's not that she's not dedicated. It's not that she's not committed. It's not that she's not a part of the core of her church, but she's been through chemotherapy and she can't go out with a compromised immune system. And so we should never question people's faith or commitment if they're just not comfortable coming back out yet, which, like I said, is about 70% of the people. But my church opened up and I didn't go back. I was watching online through Facebook Live. And then about 2-3 weeks later, my pastor, his wife, his son, and his cousin all got COVID and they had to shut back down. And then they opened back up. And I think they opened back up too quickly, but it didn't affect me because I was watching online regardless. And then this past Sunday, I tuned in like normal. I watched about 3 or 4 services on a Sunday from all around the country. But I tuned in at the time to watch my home church, and they were nowhere to be found. They didn't turn on Facebook Live. They didn't turn on the camera. They didn't turn on the feed. And it's kind of like a slap in the face to all of those that are watching from home, because out of this small congregation of about 50 people of a small church plant, only 12 were coming back in person. So that means there's another 38 that are at home watching online, and for the feed to be cut off and us not be able to see it was really tough and helps you not feel connected. And you wonder, well, what am I a part of and what am I giving to and why am I not included? And so it was kind of a tough experience to just tune in and there be no Facebook Live. But I have a friend, Jeff Reed, who does a lot of consulting with online church, and I was on his podcast and he talked about this concept of physical and digital, because of what COVID has done in the world. Really, we are now all in this digital world where from here on out, we're in a physical and digital world. Even if you can meet physically, you're going to have people watching online. And so from here on out, 2020 and beyond, we're in a digital world.
Yeah, and the way I say it too is before COVID, the average church, the average attender went once every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. So a church of 1,000 could have easily been a church of 3,000 if they all came on one Sunday. So
Yep.
even before COVID, there could easily have been more people engaging online than in person. And now, because people have gotten used to it a little bit, I feel like the opportunity is great, for reaching people online. And I don't know if this is something you've heard a lot, but in our church and other churches, a lot of the stories are that we're getting more new guests online because it's easier to watch online, to invite your friend. And so what would you say to churches about creating a good online guest experience? And like, what is a transfer? Just, this works in person and here's how we transfer it online. What would you say?
Yeah, so something that you would have in person at a typical church that cares about first impressions and guest experience would be like greeters and a parking team and ushers. Well, when you get welcomed online, you want people to welcome you as well to the experience. I always talk about the avatar concept. In the movie, they would say, I see you, to acknowledge that they're there and to welcome them. They may be tuning in your city, they may be in your state, or they may be somewhere halfway around the world, but we want to welcome them just the same and see it as an opportunity to reach people and to share the gospel and the good news. And so whether your parking team and greeters and ushers are active now, or if they're off because you're not meeting in person yet, or your team is diminished, or some of them are not ready to come back, they can serve as online chat hosts and online host in the chat room as a greeter, as an usher, but just schedule them to be in the chat and to be welcoming as an official part of the church or as themselves, their own name. But there are a lot of ways to make it feel more personal and relational. One thing I've seen churches do is have various people on camera. I was watching one multi-site church where they had all of their campus pastors from about 8 campuses that were seen throughout the morning service. And so one did a welcome and one did announcements and one did a tour and one did a response. And it was just kind of woven throughout the day. You were seeing all these different faces from people that that you typically wouldn't even get to see in person because you wouldn't be at that particular campus. And so it was a way of bringing the body together. There's things we can do through technology that you can't do in person. And so it's been amazing to see people use tools like technology for the glory of God.
How about with one of the things I know that I think churches have struggled with, even ones that were great at this before, is like getting new guests who are watching online to identify the same way they did if they came and attended in person, right? Like, come to the New Here area, fill out this card, we'll give you this gift. Sometimes, a lot of churches did that. What I heard was online that didn't work so well. I don't know if what your experience has been there or what advice you would give to churches in terms of getting people to take that next step from being anonymous and watching to somehow engaging and sharing information.
Yeah, that's a good thought, good question. So in a typical church experience on a physical weekend, one thing that I'm very passionate about, and one thing that consultants and people in first impressions world like myself talk about, is the connection card. Holding up the connection card and saying, fill this out if you're new. We have a gift for you. We have a T-shirt or a coffee mug or whatever our gift is. We want to bless you with this. And that's very tangible to hold that up in front of people and let them turn that in at a welcome center or a guest kiosk or a next steps area and get a transaction of here's your T-shirt, here's your coffee mug. It is a little bit more difficult, not impossible online. You just have to be very intentional. And one of the things that I pointed out on a webinar months ago, back when this first happened, was I did a blog post back in April about how your home church, your home website should change, the homepage of your website. Meaning, back when March and April and May, when churches weren't meeting, they didn't need to come to your website and see directions on how to get to the campus. What they did need to see is a countdown to the next experience and when you were going live again. And so tweaking the website, and I mentioned that one thing that I found that has worked well is to have a digital connection card, an online connection card that is on the home page of your website, so that if I stumble across your website on a Tuesday or a Thursday morning or a Friday night, I can take the time to fill that out on my laptop and turn that in. And so what churches that have done that have found people submitting the connection card throughout the week, the digital connection card. You can also do a lot with digital connection cards through texting services like Text and Church and other companies. Tiley just released a new messaging program that you can do texting, text welcome or text I'm new to 555, whatever the number may be. You can say that during a broadcast. Your online campus pastor, your online host can say, hey, if you're watching today and we would like to send you a gift, text I'm new to 555. And so texting is a great way. The reason I like having either a digital connection card on the website and or a texting option is because in my own personal life, when I'm sitting on my couch at home on a Sunday watching a service, I'm watching on my Roku television. I don't have my computer in front of me. I don't have my phone in front of me to fill out a connection card. I'm watching on a YouTube app on a Roku television. And so I'm sitting there with a remote control, flipping from church to church or service to service. And I don't have anything to fill out because my laptop is in my office. And so if I were to come across that church later on my phone or on my desktop computer, I could fill that out. But there is a lot to be said about having an option of texting when I do always have my phone close by. And so if I'm watching a broadcast, even on my television, and I don't have my computer handy, if somebody says, hey, would you take a moment and just text give to 55, and then to be able to do online giving. And so we just have to be more intentional. It can be done. We have the tools, we have the technology. I just worked with a company. I'm developing a new plan your visit model, a thing called Preface, where people fill that out online. I will say that going forward, before COVID, pre-March, one thing that was getting more and more popular in guest services, first impression circles, was the plan your visit model. More and more churches were adding plan your visit. Now, as we come back and we do re-entry and we reopen churches, the physical campuses, Plan Your Visit is going to be more important than ever because there's a lot of capacity issues and seating limitations. And so if I have to reserve a ticket, if I have to reserve a seat because you've taken an auditorium of 400 seats and you brought it down to 100 seats are open to abide by your state and local regulations, then I need to fill out ahead of time that I'm coming to such and such service. And so Plan Your Visit should be next level now going forward. I think every church ought to utilize a Plan Your Visit. And solutions like Text and Church have Plan Your Visit built in their offerings as a company. And there's other ones as well, like the company that I worked with on the preface model. But there's a lot of ways to connect with people. We just have to be intentional. And so if you just hit record and hit stop and you're just broadcasting a sermon, it's not going to connect. There's been a lot of discussion about even attention spans are shorter online, and we have to get creative how we craft a service. And so I was watching J.D. Greer of the Summit Church in Raleigh-Durham area. He's the president of the Southern Baptist Convention, and he broke up his sermon into 3 points. He did 3 parts. He did part 1, and then they sang a song with the worship team. And then he did part 2, and they sang a song. And they were in different rooms, and they had different backdrops and different venues and different settings. This was the same church that used the 8 campus pastors. So I was seeing multiple faces. You have to get really creative to stay with attention spans nowadays.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges of doing church online and digital is the good news is the barrier to entry is lower. It's easier to watch. It's easier to invite your friend. It's easier for somebody to check it out. It's also easier to leave. You know what I mean? It's easier to disengage and all that. So I love hearing when churches like that are doing some things to fight against that. I'd love your opinion on this. I think I probably know what you're going to say, but you were talking about, the in-person guest experience with greeters and parking volunteers and things like that, and how that can translate online and, talking to people specifically in a chat, which of course is mostly a live stream thing. Of course, people can leave a comment on demand. What would you say about on demand versus live stream? Do you feel like it's like, yes, both, and that's why we have text in options for you're new here and kind of a connection card? Do you lean more live stream just because of that engagement? Like, what's your thinking about that and what churches should do with services?
That's a good question. I like this because it plays into how I'm wired. I'm a both and guy. Hardly ever am I either or. I'm a both and guy. There are so many benefits to a live stream. When I watch Elevation Church on Sunday and I see Stephen Furtick interacting with comments in real time and talking to real people as they comment in real time, right the second they type something, he interacts with them. You can't top that. That's awesome. However, at the same time, in a both and concept, I love on demand. And so what I've been telling people and trying to shout from the mountaintop is you do not have to play your service only at Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Why not leave it up on the homepage of your website week round and let there be service after service after service? Life Church, Craig Rochelle and Life Church team has been doing this for over a decade. They have had multiple experiences throughout the day, every day, for a decade. And so I was talking with Bobby Grunwald, who's the innovation pastor at Life Church, who's speaking at the First Impressions Conference. Why not be able to watch a service Tuesday at 7 p.m. or Wednesday at 11 a.m.? There should be a way to watch the service on demand for whenever somebody stumbles across your website, when the Spirit of God leads them to your church's website through whatever search or whatever is going on in their life. They shouldn't have to wait until Sunday at 11 to see a service. So I'm a both and guy.
Good to hear. I think I am too, definitely. I think people love the options. There is a lot that's you can't get on demand that you can get live, that community, that interaction, the chat right there. I think it recreates, the in-person probably the best way, but on demand is hard to ignore too. Well, tell me a little bit more about the First Impressions Conference. Obviously, it's somewhat new, but you've had some under your belt. COVID-19 changed a lot of things like that. I'm sure there's some different angles and directions you could go, but especially for anybody who hasn't checked it out, firstimpressionsconference.com. Tell us what they can
Yeah,
expect.
as you said, you can just go to firstimpressionsconference.com. If you have not come across us before or have not experienced a conference in the past, there's what's called a VIP experience pass, which gives you, it costs a little bit more, but it gives you archives to all the previous conferences. So you can catch up and watch hundreds of videos, all this on-demand training. We have hundreds of videos to train your volunteers and your team and your staff. And so throughout the course of these last 4 years, as we've done, this is our fourth event, as people have been watching us, they'll sit in the auditorium with their entire staff. We have something for children's ministry. We have something for communication directors. We have something for worship pastors. Our biggest audience are lead pastors, senior pastors. We have a lot that touches on first impressions and guest experience for those that staff for that and have first impressions directors and guest services directors. We hit that right down the middle. But we did one conference live in Atlanta. We've done three online. We did one live in Atlanta, and we were thinking about doing another live one this year. And then I didn't have a piece about it, and I just kept holding off and holding off. And then when COVID hit, I realized why, that this was not the year to do an in-person conference. So we went back to our roots, what we did our first year, which is online only, which is really cool because it opens it up globally. Our first year, we had people tune in from 11 countries. And so, it was 11,000 people from 14 countries. So you can tune in whether you're in New Zealand or Australia or Canada or UK, or we have people in Dubai, all people all over in UAE watching the conference. And so it's not a free summit that I've gotten tired over the years of all these free webinars that just pop up and you don't take them seriously, and you get an email saying starting in 5 minutes, tune in, and nobody takes it seriously. We put a lot of work and effort and production into making it feel like a real conference with a conference notebook, and you can take notes and meet with your team. And so we put a lot, in a host and MC, we put a lot of work and time and effort into it. So we don't mind charging for it. But what we've also found is that when you charge a little something, people can put it on their calendar and they don't miss it. If it's a free webinar, they're just, forget it, I'm not going to tune in today. When they paid for it, they have it on their calendar and they're looking forward to it and they don't miss it. And so we see social media posts because we have a conference hashtag, and we see social media posts from around the country of people watching it with their team. And so we would encourage you to watch it with volunteers, with staff, with lay leaders. And so we cover everything from online presence. Yesterday, I recorded a social media panel with social media experts, and children's ministry was a great panel, great discussion, very practical. We did a guest services panel with 3 guest services directors at churches of 10,000 plus, talking about how they do guest services and how they've adjusted in this season. This year's theme is navigating a new season. And so we're talking about changes we've had to make due to COVID.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those changes are just going to be helpful forever. You know what I mean? Like it's going to change. It's going to be a little bit different. In personal, come back to an extent, and but digital will always be there, and we can't ignore it. So that's great. And we mentioned firstimpressionsconference.com. Any other ways people can connect with you or follow along?
Yeah, my name's Greg Atkinson. So you can go to gregatkinson.com as my personal website. I'm at Greg Atkinson on Twitter, at Greg Atkinson on Instagram, and you can search Greg Atkinson on Facebook and find me in a number of ways. And then we have my biggest Facebook group that is just a great community of people that share about first impressions and guest services every single day. It's called Weekend Worship and Guest Services. And so if you're on Facebook, if you just search in the search bar, Weekend Worship and Guest Services, there's a community of 15,000 people there that just talk Sunday every day. It's and that's where, and I say that because that's where you can interact with me. I can do one post and it impact 15,000 people, as opposed to 15,000 one-on-one emails that I don't have the time or capacity to do. So I can interact and comment and give feedback and be a part of discussions in a Facebook group. And I created that so that I can multiply myself.
Yeah, it's a great group. I've been in there for a while. Lots of helpful stuff in there because it's just so focused too, right? Like you can't really find this conversation anywhere else. So love the Impressions Conference and those groups. They're really helpful. Thanks for taking time to share with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.